The clinking of expensive wine glasses and the obnoxious braying of my wife's friends filled my dining room. Sarah sat at the head of the table, holding court like a queen addressing her loyal subjects. Her friends, Brenda and Chloe, hung on her every word. I sat at the opposite end, nursing a glass of ice water, completely invisible in my own home. We were supposed to be celebrating our 6-month anniversary, though the evening felt much more like a hostage situation. "So Sarah," Brenda asked, taking a massive gulp of the imported Merlot that I paid for, "how is married life treating you? You two made it half a year." Sarah smirked. She looked right down the table at me, her eyes cold and calculating. "It is fine. But honestly, I give this marriage 7 months total." Brenda and Chloe erupted into howling, high-pitched laughter. They slapped the solid mahogany table. They wiped away fake tears. Sarah joined in, throwing her head back, laughing at my expense in the house I bought, drinking the wine I provided. I did not yell. I did not throw my glass. I simply placed my water on a wooden coaster. I looked down at my left hand. The gold wedding band suddenly felt incredibly heavy and suffocating. I grabbed it with my right thumb and index finger, slid it off my knuckle, and placed it exactly in the center of my ceramic plate. The sharp metallic clink cut through their laughter like a gunshot. The table went dead silent. The smirks vanished from Brenda and Chloe's faces instantly. Sarah stopped laughing and stared at the gold ring, then looked up at me with wide eyes. "What are you doing?" Sarah asked. Her tone was no longer mocking or arrogant. It was highly defensive. "Saving you a month," I said. I stood up, pushed my heavy chair in, turned my back on the three of them, and walked straight out the front door. I got into my truck, started the engine, and backed out of the driveway. I did not have a specific destination in mind. I just needed to be far away from the sheer disrespect radiating from that dining room. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Once. Twice. 10 times. I ignored it completely. I drove down the interstate, letting the steady hum of the tires clear my racing head. Sarah and I met 2 years ago. I am 55, she is 48. We both had established adult lives, careers, and strict habits. I own a highly successful hardware supply business in the county. She worked as a mid-level shift manager at a regional retail chain. When we got engaged, she insisted on quitting her job to manage our home and focus on building our life together. I agreed, wanting her to be happy, but strictly under the condition that we sign a solid prenuptial agreement. My business and the house, which I owned outright for 20 years, were to remain solely mine. She agreed, but she had her own lawyer negotiate a specific clause. If the marriage ended after the 6-month mark but before our 5-year anniversary, she would receive a $50,000 transition payout to help her get back on her feet, plus exactly half of any joint savings accumulated during the short marriage. I thought it was a fair financial safety net. I never thought it was a moving target. I pulled into the bright parking lot of a 24-hour highway diner. I went inside, sat in a corner booth, and ordered a black coffee and a slice of cherry pie. I finally pulled my smartphone out of my jacket pocket. 22 missed calls from Sarah. 7 text messages. "Where are you going? You are overreacting. It was just a joke. Come back here right now. Brenda and Chloe are extremely uncomfortable. You are embarrassing me." Not a single genuine apology. She was entirely concerned with her public image and the comfort of her snooty friends. This was the exact pattern of our entire 6-month marriage. Her friends were a constant, parasitic fixture in our home. They drank my expensive liquor, ate my prime groceries, and made passive-aggressive comments about my taste in furniture, my long work schedule, and my quiet hobbies. Sarah never defended me once. She always joined them. I was the butt of every joke, the walking wallet that funded their girls' trips and expensive spa days. I drank my bitter coffee. The cherry pie tasted like damp cardboard. I reviewed the last 6 months with absolute clarity. The physical intimacy dried up exactly a week after the honeymoon. The daily affection vanished completely. She treated me like an annoying roommate who happened to pay all the utility bills. I left a $20 bill on the table and walked back to my truck. I did not go home. I drove to a nearby chain motel, paid for a standard room in cash, and went to sleep. Or at least, I tried to sleep. My mind raced in the dark. Why did she specifically say 7 months? Why not a year? Why not 10 months? 7 months was exactly 4 weeks away. The next morning, I woke up at 6 sharp. I drove back to my neighborhood. Her car was still in the driveway. I walked through the front door. The house was an absolute disaster. Empty wine bottles cluttered the expensive dining table. Plates with half-eaten cheese and crackers sat everywhere. I ignored the mess and walked straight to my home office down the hall. I walked inside and locked the heavy door behind me. I needed solid answers. I booted up my desktop computer. Sarah used this computer occasionally to print return shipping labels or check her personal email. We shared the same internet browser. I opened it and clicked on the browsing history. I am not a man who ever snoops, but the blatant disrespect the night before erased any guilt or hesitation I might have felt. She had cleared her entire web history. That was my very first major red flag. Sarah was genuinely terrible with technology. She barely knew how to connect her new phone to the home network, let alone clear a browser cache. Someone specifically told her to do it. I opened the router administration panel on my desktop. It clearly logs all traffic and websites visited on our home network regardless of browser history. I scrolled through the text logs from the past month. Mixed in with social media sites and online clothing stores were repeated daily visits to local commercial real estate listings. Not just casual looking. She was viewing specific closing documents and mortgage calculators on a local community bank website. I opened my heavy-bottom desk drawer and pulled out my steel lockbox. I took out my official copy of our prenuptial agreement. I read the clauses carefully. 6 months for the payout to activate. But there was another critical clause, one my lawyer Gary insisted on adding. The $50,000 payout was contingent on fidelity and the absolute absence of financial fraud. If either party was caught funneling joint assets or hiding money, the payout was immediately voided, and the offending party would be responsible for all resulting legal fees. I opened a new tab and logged securely into our joint bank account. This was the account where I faithfully deposited my portion of the household bills and her generous monthly allowance for groceries and incidentals. The total balance was significantly lower than I expected. I clicked on the detailed transaction history. For the past 5 months, there were regular cash withdrawals of exactly $200, sometimes twice a week. They were always ATM withdrawals at a grocery store 2 towns over. Small enough to avoid setting off any major fraud alerts from the bank, but frequent enough to add up fast. I grabbed a calculator and did the math. She had quietly drained nearly $8,000 in pure cash. I needed more proof. I needed to know exactly what she was planning with her friends. I unlocked the office door and walked quietly down the hall to our master bedroom. Sarah was fast asleep, snoring softly, tangled securely in the high-end sheets I bought. Her designer purse sat on the wooden dresser. I picked it up by the strap and walked into the master bathroom, closing the door as quietly as possible. I opened the leather purse. Wallet, expensive makeup, keys, designer sunglasses. I dug deeper into the lining. In the zippered side pocket, I found a thick, folded paper envelope. I opened it. It was a fresh deposit receipt from a completely different bank across town. The checking account was in the name of Sarah and Brenda. The balance was exactly $8,400. Beneath the official receipt was a printed email. It was from a local commercial realtor. Hi Sarah and Brenda. The seller formally accepted your aggressive offer on the downtown condo. We just need the final down payment by the 15th of next month, and we can close immediately. Exciting news. The 15th of next month. Exactly 1 week after our specific 7-month anniversary. My blood ran ice cold, and then it boiled with sheer rage. It was a calculated, heavily premeditated theft. She married me strictly for a quick payday to buy a condo with her obnoxious friend. The disrespect at the dinner table was just her arrogant victory lap. She thought she had already won the game. She thought I was too old and stupid to notice her stealing my money. I took out my phone and took clear, high-resolution photos of the deposit receipt and the realtor email. I put the papers back exactly as I found them, zipped the hidden pocket, and placed the purse back on the dresser next to her sleeping head. I left the house immediately. I drove straight to the local branch of my primary bank. I sat down with the branch manager, a man I had known for 15 years. I instructed him to freeze the joint account immediately due to suspicious fraudulent withdrawals. I then diverted all my future business income and personal deposits back into my solo account that Sarah had absolutely no access to. From the bank, I drove directly to my lawyer's office downtown. Gary was surprised to see me without an appointment, but he brought me into his office right away. "Gary, I need to file for divorce today," I said, sitting down heavily in the leather chair opposite his desk. "Slow down, Tom. What happened?" Gary asked, pulling out a yellow legal pad. I explained the terrible dinner party. I explained the disgusting joke. I pulled out my phone and showed him the photos of the secret bank deposit slip and the printed realtor email. Gary put on his reading glasses and scrutinized the photos closely. He let out a long, low whistle. "The 7-month mark," Gary said. His voice was incredibly sharp. She intentionally waited until the 6-month mark passed, so the payout clause became legally active. She plans to file the papers at 7 months, take your 50 grand, plus whatever cash she siphoned off, and buy a place with her friend. That is exactly what I discovered. Does this prove fraud to void the prenup payout? I asked. "Tom, you hit the absolute jackpot," Gary said, smiling slightly. "This is textbook financial fraud and a severe breach of the prenuptial agreement. The payout is completely void. Furthermore, we can sue to recover every single penny of the $8,000 she stole from the joint account." "I do not care about the $8,000 right now," I said firmly. "I want her out of my house today." "Legally, she established residency there," Gary warned. "You cannot just throw her bags on the street without due process." "I own the house free and clear," I replied. "She has absolutely no equity in the property. What is the fastest legal way to remove her?" "I will draft an emergency eviction notice citing financial theft, fraud, and severe breach of contract," Gary explained. "I will have a legal courier drop it at your house in exactly 2 hours. You hand her the formal divorce papers and the immediate eviction notice. If she refuses to leave the premises, we file a formal police report for the grand theft of the joint funds. She will leave voluntarily to avoid handcuffs and a felony charge." "Draft the papers," I said. "I am going back to the house to pack her things." I shook his hand and drove back to my property. I had 2 hours before the courier arrived. I went down to the basement and grabbed a box of heavy-duty black plastic garbage bags. I marched back upstairs into the master bedroom. Sarah was just starting to stir. She stretched her arms and let out a loud, lazy yawn. "Where were you last night?" she asked, her voice raspy and annoyed. "You threw a massive, embarrassing tantrum over a simple joke." I did not answer her. I walked straight to her side of the massive walk-in closet. I grabbed her expensive dresses, still on their hangers, and shoved them aggressively into the first black garbage bag. "What are you doing?" she shrieked, sitting bolt upright in the bed. I moved directly to her extensive shoe rack. Designer heels, expensive winter boots. I dumped them all unceremoniously into the second bag. "Tom, stop it right now. Have you lost your mind?" She jumped out of bed and grabbed my left arm. I turned and looked at her. I did not raise my voice. I spoke with absolute terrifying calm. "Take your hands off me." She flinched hard and stepped back quickly. The arrogant smugness from the night before was completely gone, replaced by genuine confusion and rising panic. "Pack the rest of your things," I said, pointing at the bathroom. "You are leaving." "You cannot kick me out," she yelled, her face turning red. "I am your wife. I live here. You're just being a sensitive baby about last night." "Last night was enlightening," I said. I walked over to the wooden dresser, opened her purse, pulled out the hidden paper envelope, and tossed it onto the bed sheets. But this morning was highly educational. Sarah looked down at the envelope. All the color drained from her face instantly. She looked like she was going to be physically sick. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "Tom, I can explain," she stammered weakly. "Do not bother," I said, tying the first garbage bag shut. "You slowly drained 8 grand from our joint account to buy a downtown condo with Brenda. You were waiting for the specific 7-month mark to trigger the $50,000 prenup payout to cover the rest of your mortgage. You planned this entire scam before we even walked down the church aisle." "That is not true," she cried, tears finally welling in her eyes. "Brenda needed financial help. The condo is an investment for our future." "You are a terrible liar," I said coldly. "And an even worse thief. My lawyer Gary already has the high-resolution photos of the secret deposit slips and the emails. I froze the joint accounts this morning. You officially breached the fidelity and fraud clauses of our prenuptial agreement. The 50 grand is gone. You get absolutely nothing from me." She began to sob openly, falling to her knees. "Tom, please. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. I am so sorry." "Counseling is for broken marriages," I said, stepping around her to grab a third bag. This was a calculated robbery. "Pack your bathroom bags. My lawyer is sending a legal courier with the divorce papers and a formal eviction notice. If you are not out of this house by noon, I am calling the authorities to report the felony theft of the $8,000. You can choose to leave quietly in your car, or you can leave in the back of a patrol car. Your choice." She knew I was dead serious. She grabbed her phone from the nightstand and frantically dialed a number. "Brenda, get over here right now. Bring your truck immediately." She was completely hysterical, screaming into the phone. I walked downstairs to the kitchen and made myself a fresh pot of strong coffee. I sat at the island counter and waited patiently. 30 minutes later, Brenda and Chloe pulled aggressively into the driveway. They rushed through the unlocked front door, looking furious and ready for a fight. "Tom, what the hell is wrong with you?" Brenda demanded, marching straight into the kitchen. "Sarah is upstairs crying hysterically. You are an abusive monster." I stood up from the stool. I walked slowly around the counter until I was face to face with Brenda. She took a step back, suddenly intimidated by my size. "Brenda," I said evenly, "I know everything about the downtown condo. I know about the secret joint bank account. I know you two stole my money to fund your little real estate venture." Brenda's mouth opened wide, but no sound came out. Chloe looked frantically between Brenda and me, clearly realizing she was caught in the middle of a massive legal disaster. "You have exactly 1 hour to get your friend and her garbage bags out of my house," I continued, pointing toward the front door. "If you are still on my property at 12:01, I will have you both arrested for criminal trespassing and conspiracy to commit financial fraud." The front doorbell rang sharply. It was the legal courier. I signed the clipboard for the thick manila envelope, walked back into the kitchen, and threw it hard onto the counter right in front of them. "Take the trash out," I said, pointing upstairs. The next hour was a flurry of chaotic packing, loud crying, and slamming doors. Sarah begged me to talk to her from the top of the stairs. I sat in my comfortable recliner in the living room, drinking my black coffee, reading the morning paper. I completely ignored her existence. Brenda and Chloe carried the heavy black garbage bags out to their truck. They did not look at me once. The incredible arrogance from the dinner party was completely shattered and swept away. At exactly 11:45, Sarah walked slowly into the living room. Her eyes were red, puffy, and swollen. She looked absolutely pathetic. "I hope you are happy," she spat bitterly. "I am ecstatic," I replied without looking up from the sports section. She turned around and walked out the door. The heavy oak door clicked shut securely. The house fell completely silent. It was the very best sound I had heard in 6 long months. The divorce proceedings were incredibly fast and brutal. Gary submitted the ironclad evidence of the secret bank account and the commercial real estate contract to the judge. Sarah's cheap lawyer tried to argue that the funds were a marital gift, but the clear paper trail was undeniable. The stern judge took one look at the case file and threw the book at her. The prenuptial payout was officially voided due to severe breach of contract. Furthermore, the judge ordered Sarah to repay the $8,000 she had illegally siphoned from our joint account within 30 days. She did not have the money. She and Brenda had already locked it into a strict, non-refundable escrow deposit for the downtown condo. When the final financing fell through because Sarah did not get her expected $50,000 payout, they lost the deposit entirely. Brenda furiously blamed Sarah for the failure. Their lifelong friendship imploded spectacularly over the lost money. I heard through mutual county acquaintances that Sarah was eventually forced to move into a cheap, run-down apartment on the bad side of town. She had to take an exhausting job as a daytime cashier at a local grocery store just to make ends meet and pay off her mounting legal fees. She tried reaching out to me twice with long, pathetic letters apologizing for everything. I blocked her phone number entirely and returned her written letters completely unopened. A full year has passed since that terrible dinner party. I am currently sitting on my back wooden porch, watching the beautiful sunset over my vast property. The house is quiet, clean, and entirely mine once again. My hardware business is thriving more than ever. I have reconnected with old loyal friends that Sarah had systematically alienated during our brief time together. Taking off that heavy gold wedding ring was the absolute best decision I ever made in my entire life. It did not take 7 months to realize my true worth, and it only took one single morning to take my peaceful life back.